If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
The blah blah.
Sending out good vibes.
The blah blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
The blah blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
They had to have the Internet of Bodies activated in some way in order for 5G to do what it needs to do. And they had a couple of different options. Like you could get a chip in your hand, and there was people already doing it, and all your banking stuff was there.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerican Show. We are going to be chatting with Cal Washington a little bit later. The intro might throw you off a little bit. This was originally going to be a Grimerica Outlawed show, but didn't quite make it as long as it needed to be. So we cut it short at an hour and decided we'd just do it as a regular show. It's not like it's crazy controversial or anything like that. It's mostly just about how to step outside of the system and not pay tax. So it's a fun chat with Cal a little bit later. And we got everybody's favorite podcaster, Graham Blue Balls Dunlop, with his new blue mic that nobody gets to see now. I wish I should have got you the blue ball mic pop cover when you're still live streaming.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you believe in blue balls and wind chill now?
No, I'm not fully. I'm not fully in on either of those.
You've come a long way, though.
Yeah, not into it.
I'm pretty sure I just seen you say in the chats the other day that you do believe in wind chill.
Of course, when the wind, it's just subjective. You can't measure wind chill like properly. I go out if I just did my Wim Hof breathing, it wouldn't be like an extra minus 15 for me, maybe. But for somebody that just gone out and they're not prepared, then maybe, it's like minus 20.
So you don't think there's like a scientific way to calculate wind chill?
In one strict place at one specific time, but wind is inherently all over the place.
But there is a formula. It's 13.12 times 0.6215 T minus 1137 V to the 016. So I don't know what the fuck that means, but it doesn't seem subjective. I guess it's subjective. It's a gust or not.
Wind is never just static. It's not a static thing.
So your problem is more with the forecast of the wind chill than the.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So maybe they're just taking.
I know you can sit there with a fucking blow dryer and measure how hot it is on something. Like would be like a wind chill factor or a wind heat factor.
I love bringing back these old arguments.
I know you can measure all these things, but.
Well, you don't believe any of you. Have you thrown out the wind chill calculation institution with every other institution? You're done with it all. I don't believe the weather. I don't believe the weatherman anymore.
No, they're terrible. They don't know.
They're pretty bad here.
They want to give us carbon taxes and taxes.
Actually, they've been better.
Change.
I find they've been better than ever lately. I find myself actually trusting the weather 2 or 3 days out.
Oh, good.
But one thing I do find that I've predicted now is if they say it's going to warm up to a certain temperature, you can usually like double it. They're always super conservative on those Chinooks.
Right. And here's the other problem.
Like I said the other day, it said high of +4 or something like that. I said, it'll be 10. You watch. It'll be 10. Yeah. What was it? It was 10 for like 8, 3 days straight.
Yeah. So that is weird, right? Why? And then the other part
is because it's okay to be low on a hot day.
But you can't, but when it gets hot, they're going to start doing heat warnings and cold warnings. It's all fear mongering now. You go to your thing and half the time there's a warning on there that the weather is extreme. And it's bullshit.
I mean, people are weak. You got to remember that we come from a hardier,
it's all part of
we come from a hardier stock.
It's all part of warming us up to the inevitable carbon tax for the climate change. It's coming, and
The
lock yourself in
inevitable.
because
Have you not fucking looked at your fucking bills? You're paying carbon tax, buddy. You've been paying it for a while. For like 13, this is month
I know.
13.
Yeah, I know. But this, I'm talking more of on a global, not just Canada, who's already succumbed to the farce. I'm talking about like everybody.
I don't think succumbed is a word, but
Succumb.
actually, you know what? The states do like weird throw ed on words that I don't agree with all the time.
Like what?
Well, like
Supposed?
instead of leapt, they'd say leaped,
Leaped.
or
Really?
instead of crept, they'd say creeped. Crept
Really?
does not exist in U.S. English.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Oh yeah, at first you're like this guy, and then you realize that it's clearly a thing. I remember listening to it in Dune for the first time. And I was like, how can this guy, a world-renowned author, not understand that he should have put leapt there? But clearly it's because I'm an idiot. And
I love how you went to the trouble to look that up too.
look what up. I don't know if that.
it was.
I don't know if that's an actual thing.
Oh,
Should I look? I only looked up the wind chill.
I thought you meant you looked up leaped and creeped.
Well, no, but now it's just that I've just heard like hundreds of different authors based in the U.S. do the same thing for them all to make that same
now
mistake.
you understand. Oh, I see. Okay.
But is leapt British? Both leaped and leapt are the past form of the verb to leap. The difference between them is purely what kind of English you want to learn. British English, BRE, or American English, AME. So that's it. We use British English. Actually, we use a weird hybrid now because they don't teach my kids Z anymore.
Yeah.
I learned Z. What did you learn? You're older.
No, I think
Z might have been a
Z
might have been
oh,
a
no,
small
Z, yeah.
bump because I think my mom learned Z,
No, we learned Z. Yeah.
and then when I was in school, it was Z, and it was a
Yeah,
big
no.
thing. And now they're teaching my kids Z again.
Ugh.
So it was just like this little thing we tried to do to be a little different, I guess.
Yeah.
But I digress. Anyway, what were we talking about before we spun out?
I don't know.
Nothing. We just spun right out, right off the bat.
Yeah. So then this is a good chat with Cal. It's real interesting how he's kind of gotten away. He's done a lot of these court appearances. He's sort of tried a bunch of different things, and basically it's like kind of maritime law, or as commerce. I think it is like it's still hard for me to wrap my head around. But when you hear him talk about the history of maritime law, it makes sense of how it sort of came about, and that the Queen really swore to the King James Bible. It's kind of fascinating. And then he gets into some esoteric parts towards the end about the Watchers, and kind of gets a little more spiritual as well, which kind of shocked me when I first started learning about him. But he's from empowermovement.com. He's the founder and CEO of that. And they're talking about, how can I start using notice of liability and other causes like that. Yeah, kind of interesting. Kind of one of these, like, we talked about how to exit the system a little bit, how far do you have to go? And it's tough, man. It's not easy,
No, and then it's like once you get out, what are you doing? I mean, honestly, if you don't have a sweet ass ranch or a boat or an island, I mean, it's gonna be tougher. It's not good, it's gonna be different than what you're used to.
Exactly. I saw his Red Pill Expo presentation. Interesting how this was prior to COVID, and he was talking about forced vaccinations.
Well, everybody knew that was coming.
Yeah. And then he talks about 5G a little bit and smart meters as well on the Inpower Reclaim Your Authority movement.
So someone
you have a right to protect your health and home.
I got to give a shout out to Kyle D, old Kyle Delisle over in Quebec. Locked the fuck down, curfewed out. Actually, he's going to be here in a couple days. He's coming with us down to Arizona, Magic on the Mountain. We were going to be partying down in Arizona in 3 weeks. Owen Hunt, Joe Root, Brandon Powell, learning some crazy stuff, sacrificing goats. Probably the closest to a cult thing we've done yet, I guess, but it's not a cult thing. It's a magic thing. Anyway, Kyle Delisle has been talking about how he's nearly positive that the Canadian government has been tracking cell phones, that the cell phone companies have been giving up the data because some people knew where somebody he knows was without her actually mentioning exactly. And it came out. And then this just came out.
The Public Health Agency of Canada confirmed media reports just before Christmas that it had secretly accessed location data for 33 million mobile devices to monitor the movement of Canadians during COVID-19. That number represents roughly 87% of the population who were spied on without any knowledge that the government was accessing their data. Public Health Agency of Canada officials were forced to admit this had occurred after a request for proposal was published with a call for interest in continuing a program of collecting data for up to 5 more years.
Bum, 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 bum. Brrr. So they were just tracking our phones.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, dude, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, what, nothing's going to happen of it either. Nothing's going to happen. I mean,
I don't know.
Nothing ever happens.
Can I sue my cell phone provider?
You can't. You can't sue anybody, dude. You can't even sue the provinces for what's going on.
I don't want to sue the government. I want to sue my cell phone provider.
Yeah,
that's a private company.
Yeah, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
You're so jaded. I should get you a nice jade shirt.
Jaded, yeah. I'm jaded.
Jaded. I bet you used to sing that song in the shower in your Trans Am.
What? I got it.
Is that your dream car? When you make your first million, you're gonna get a T-top Trans Am with the bird on the front.
Dude, 3 of my friends that I hung out with, one guy had a Z28. It was awesome. And then
the white one,
Camaro.
Was it the white one?
No, he had a blue one. And my other buddy had a red Camaro, which was super gutless. It only had a 305 in it. And then my other friend had a white Firebird that we used to go partying all the time, and he had a 400 in his.
Dude, I go back and forth on whether I want to get like a Tesla or something like that, or like an old like 67 Camaro and just whop, whop, whop.
Yeah.
Fuck, that Tesla looks so fast. So fun. I wish I knew someone that just had one that would lend it to me for a couple of weeks. Because you can't rent them. That's the problem. You can't rent either of those things. And it's kind of like, but one day I'm going to buy myself a little like summer car. I don't know if I want an electric one or the like old 350 worst on gas you could possibly get.
My buddy had a Datsun 210, one of those little, like 2 of my friends had one. So one guy had a gutless one, all souped up and looked good. And the other guy had a real rough looking one that had a passing gear. And we'd go drive around the track of our high school, like doing like raceway type turns around the track. And we got busted by the gym teacher once. And then we had to go around and rake the whole track. We just break in through the yard and just rip around the track.
Oh yeah, man. We used to get in so much trouble when I first got my license.
Oh.
We were talking about licenses the other day with the kids. I was like, no, you'll be driving with me for a couple years. I'll probably get them trucks, honestly.
I got into an accident 4 days after.
Yeah, the cars seem dangerous. I mean, they're safer these days, the newer ones, I guess. But I feel way safer in my truck than I ever would in a little car. I remember fucking shutting off all my lights and driving my mom's going to be like, you motherfucker. Yeah. I remember shutting off all my lights in my like parents' little red Sunfire because we had this road we used to always go down to the bottom of to go. It would like take you out on the lake and
so you'd have to go down there in the dark so nobody could see
because there's some houses a little further down and we weren't sure because this is like an empty lot, but it would go right down to the lake and you park down there and hang out and smoke weed or make out or whatever the fuck, whatever you're up to. Yeah. So we shut off the lights and we're creeping. It's like, you hear a little tick, 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 and all of a sudden, this fucking chain comes like whipping up the fucking hood and fucking into the glass, and it's like sparking over the fucking windshield and like, tuk, 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 like, and it's like stopped on the roof of the car.
Oh, really? It stopped you?
Well, no, it's because it was like hanging across the thing, and it had like got hung up on the front of the car, and then once we put enough pressure on it, it like scraped up over the hood and onto the thing, and I stopped.
Oh my God.
So then a couple people had to like get out and hold the chain up so we could like, but I think when my parents were like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. Must have been vandals. So this might be a coming out party for my mom. She's going to be like, son of a bitch. She probably suspected.
I had one where I pulled out of a driveway and my buddy was on the hood of the car at the time, and I was joking around going forward and backward and forward and backward, and I pulled out and the car door was open too, and the door hit the other car as I pulled out, just smack, and then we peel away, and then I got in trouble for my parents, and it was brutal. we got totally busted. Oh, it was the worst feeling ever.
Yeah, piss jugging it. Or actually crashing is worse. I've had a couple doozies. I
haven't had any bad crashes since the couple early ones that I had.
Well, mine were early too, back when I was still drinking. Well, one time I wasn't drinking. I was just leaving Prem Steel. Fucking didn't see anything coming. Just blew the stop sign and smashed into buddy.
Oh.
Yeah. That was on he was on Glenmore, bro. Doing 100. And then the other time I had that little car because my truck was smashed. So I got a little car. A little I think it might have been like Sunfire-ish, but maybe a Cavalier or something like that. And I fucking rolled the thing on the dirt roads back there. Just all wasted. I woke up on the roof. It was upside down. My buddies came and got me. Fuck, I had the best friends, man. They came and got me and flipped that thing over and fucking drug it home. We lived out in the acreage then, so they just drug that car home sparking. My buddies are out in the field picking up all my papers and shit that had my name in it, that had fucking gone blowing all over the field. Yeah, I remember that. That was a rough fucking month. I trashed 2 vehicles.
Oh, God.
All of a sudden I went from being on top of the world until I had a truck and a car. I was just living the dream. And then I was looking for used cars. I bought a used 1992 Grand Am for $400. A couple weeks later, fucking bam.
Really? Again?
No, I didn't crash that one.
No. Okay.
That was the last time I crashed. Really, I think. I don't drink anymore. I definitely don't drink and drive. If I do drink, I would never drink and drive now. I mean, it's amazing that I didn't kill myself for somebody else. They don't mix.
No.
It's crazy that people weren't fucking crashing all the time. It's crazy to think that pre-1970, that shit was just, okay, dude, not even pre-1970. I was with my buddy, shout out to Rizzo. I don't think he listens to the show. Darren. His name was Darren too, but his last name starts with a P. I won't say it on the show. Anyway, we're talking I was too young to drive at that time. And I think he was probably 17 or 18, maybe 19. And I was 16, beginners, but not full license yet. And we got pulled over. He's drunk. 12-hour suspension. That was back in and it's back in my mom's day. That was you got that at most. At most, you got a 12-hour suspension if you were off the chains fucking wasted. So it's crazy people just weren't crashing all the time. Yeah. It must just because the cars were slower and shit. I don't know. What do you think? Were you allowed to drink and drive when you were young?
I got pulled over going from the bar to my girlfriend's house in a big Chevy Caprice Classic and on this back roads, and the cops pulled me over and I was fucking really hammered. And this is when I was young, just out of school. And they let me drive to my girlfriend's. They followed me to my girlfriend's place and gave me a 24-hour. They let me get back in and drive to my girlfriend's.
That would never happen today.
I mean,
You'd be tased. I mean, I got pulled over when I first moved to Calgary, or shortly after. I got pulled over out on Susina Reserve by the Indian cops, and they gave me a 12-hour. They didn't even really give me a 12-hour. They just like took my license and mailed it to me. So I got it in the mail like 2 days later because they're just like, oh my God. But they didn't let me drive. They drove me home.
It started to get pretty serious around then, I think, really. Around that time, I think it started to get pretty serious after that.
It even seemed serious then.
There was a point where we started to really make sure somebody was a designated driver. Like there was a point when we had to actually do that.
Yeah, it was probably like around 2000 or shortly after.
Oh shit, it was
probably before that when we should have done it.
Yeah.
But I was just a kid. Because I was only turning 20 at 2000. Shit, it was later than that. Man, I drove through that fence. It was wasn't that long ago. Maybe 2005. I really settled down once I had kids. Started the podcast.
Yeah.
I was really like, I was only a couple years after being a bit of a maniac out. No, it was longer than that. Sorry. I calmed down in 2011, 2010.
Yeah, that's closer to me than I thought. I calmed down in 2008.
Well, Madison was born in 2011.
Yeah.
And if whatever I hadn't smartened up by then was smartened up pretty quick.
Yeah.
Oh, crazy times. But
I shouldn't say I calmed down. I crashed. Like
when our parents were kids, you could just drink and drive. It was fine.
One for the road. I mean, where does that come from? Right here, have one for the road.
Yeah. Man, can you imagine if we would have lived then? Dead. 100%. I feel like if it was like that now, people would be crashing constantly. There's just too many people, probably. That's what it is. It'd be interesting to know how much the population's gone up in that time. I mean, where I grew up was the fucking sticks. It makes more sense.
Yeah, exactly.
But to think that people were rolling around the city, Calgary, fucking wasted in 1960 seems crazy.
But we were also, I mean, I remember we were smoking a lot. We had a whole station wagon full of people, like in the back, probably 8 or 9 people in the station wagon. And poor buddy who's straight laced is crazy. And we were hotboxing the station wagon and we get pulled over and he's not partaking in any of it because he never does. And he was our designated driver during that event. And the cops, they didn't do anything. They just let us go. Thank God. But
yeah, I got let off pretty stoned a few times. I remember last time when we went to the first fucking CAC down in Seaside there, Kyle almost rear-ended a cop. He was just stoned up, speeding down the highway, almost rear-ends a fucking cop. The cop like pulls over, lets us fucking pass, and then pulls us over. I was like, "You're going to jail, bro." You let us go though.
Oh, it's scary in the States because really the cops are a lot worse.
Oh yeah, I was like, here we go.
Our cops are so nice in Canada, really.
I was like, you're going to jail, bro. Then he comes up to my window. I'm like, oh fuck. He's like, what are you boys doing? I'm like, cruising. He let us go though. He followed us to the state line and then fuck. We were only like 8 miles out of Oregon. Washington State Trooper. So let us go.
You just said cruising.
I said cruising. I don't know. He caught me off guard. I wasn't expect. It wasn't supposed to be my fucking problem. I wasn't driving. I never almost hit a cop. Right? I think that's the thing they do in the States, though, is go to the passenger door more often than not.
Yeah.
In Canada, they don't play that shit. They just go to the driver's side door. Anyway.
Well, let's get back to reality here, which is our update from Quebec. So speaking of Quebec.
Should I play a jingle?
This is, play a spam gram jingle maybe, and email me your stories, your from where you are around the world, what's happening with your COVID lockdowns, if you have any, if not. Things are kind of crazy here in Canada.
Spam Graham.
Quebec is off the charts.
Yeah, I mean, well, so hey guys, this is Dave from Quebec again. So I was listening to the Meredith Miller pre-show and felt that I had to give you my thoughts about what's happening here in the East. I feel Quebecers in general are very gullible and docile people. Unfortunately, I was convinced until a few days ago that we were doomed. I was actually looking at solutions to leave the country, leaving behind my relatives, selling my brand new house that I'd built myself and everything else. but things seem to shift a little bit. I started to share some stuff on Facebook again in a desperate attempt to wake a few sheeple up. I also started to engage conversation about COVID with coworkers and even clients. I'm a Tyler by trade. And what I can tell is that people here are slowly waking up to this masquerade at last. The propaganda here is through the roof since it started. I've never seen such incoherences and flat out lies in the media. And they always made it sound like everyone is on board with the government decisions, which is totally false. And another strategy to make people like us lay down, which worked on me, unfortunately. I feel that the media and the government are making more and more mistakes and are starting to shuffle. Now they are threatening to put a COVID tax on unvaxxed people, which would be around $2,000 per unvaxxed. I personally don't know I don't know.
I'll pay that.
I personally don't know a single soul that agrees with this madness. Mainstream media are now hallowing the doctors and scientists who speak against the narrative in what seems to be a way to protect them, as the government's trust has fallen from 65 to 35% in the latest polls. So this is a little update on what's up here in Quebec. Thanks for all the good content, guys, and keep fighting the good fight. Well, thanks for the update, David from Quebec. It'll be interesting. Let me know if you end up moving or if you stay. I mean, I have some pretty black-pilled thoughts about even if people wake up. I don't think, I don't, that's just going to be more for the powers that be to fight against, but I don't think this is going away. But Darren has different thoughts.
I think they'll pop eventually and just kill everybody, just like they're doing in Kazakhstan. I mean, those motherfuckers in Kazakhstan they're not letting anybody get away with that shit. If you were any part of it, it looks like you were getting fucked up.
You mean like what do you mean? You mean the people pushing back?
Like the
but we're never gonna. That's not gonna happen in Canada.
Especially not gonna happen.
How many countries will that happen in? I mean,
I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe a handful, like in Eastern Europe or something, where they've been through this in the recent past and they know what the fuck is happening.
I don't know. Has Kazakhstan been through it? Probably, right?
Part of that stuff. Yeah, I mean, that was once it was once part of the USSR, right?
Yeah, we probably started that.
I mean, I think Alberta, there's been a lot of stuff happening here too. I mean, there's been some controversy. Like there's this COVID infections and deaths soar after the first vaccine dose. This was from Alex Berenson, going right after Alberta's own data from the government. And he says,
they deleted that. They deleted those graphs.
Yeah.
Fucking Berenson. If Berenson could have just kept his mouth shut, then we could have kept the graphs.
Stunning figures from Canada show a huge spike in cases after vaccinations. To the Centers for Disease Control and the media, this is the key.
Did you go to the website?
I've been there many times before, not recently though.
But did you go to the archive one now that shows those graphs that was showing like 1,000 cases a day for the first 20 days after your first shot? 20 deaths a day? 60 hospitalizations a day, and that especially in that upper age group, 70 plus.
Yeah. Well,
all counted as unvaccinated.
I think that was what I was just about to read. To the Senate, to the CDC and the media, all these deaths are occurring in the unvaccinated.
But you're preaching to the choir.
What?
You're just preaching to the choir.
Yeah, but it's showing that there are some of these, like this, this isn't just an outlier in Alberta. I mean, obviously this kind of trend is probably happening all across Canada. So
Alberta keeps ruining it for everybody. We show the comorbidities.
I was looking on the BC website for a friend of mine.
They're like, you fucking idiots, you're not supposed to show the comorbidities. You're not supposed to show that. Because we were the only province that did that.
Unvaccinated. I couldn't find the definition of unvaccinated in the BC website.
Do we give it here?
We did at one point. I don't know if it's still there, but we did at one point. Yeah.
And we gave comorbidities, which nobody else really did, I don't think.
And ages and percentages and yeah. But I don't remember seeing time on when we were looking months and months and months ago.
Time?
Time. Like, well, yeah, because that's the whole point of Alex's thing.
Oh,
is
no,
that
this isn't some
it all-
weird fucking subchart someplace. Like, I would have never found it. I would have never fucking found it.
Yeah, but I looked through all the charts before and I never saw time, I don't think, right? I never saw the way it's front loaded to. I mean, that's what makes this so not a coincidence, right? If it was a coincidence, it'd be all spread out evenly over time, right? Not so front loaded after the jab.
100%.
Anyways, I'll put a link to this in the show notes.
It was in a weird spot, though, that I would have never found it.
Yeah.
Who knows how long it's even been there?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I did scour that months and months ago, and I don't remember ever seeing charts with times. But anyways,
How does Berenson beat us to our own province's data?
I know. We should have him on the show.
How do you get a hold of him?
I heard that
Substack
Malone was calling him out because Berenson was calling Malone out. So
they're
then
fighting.
we have there's like a fight between what do you call it again? The controlled opposition, or people being accused of being controlled opposition.
The two controlled
People calling
opposites.
Malone a spy, and he's calling out Alex
They're
as
calling
controlled
each other
opposition.
fucking as
You're a
controlled
spy.
op.
No, you're a spy.
It's tough to say. One's from Pharma and one's from the New York fucking Times. I mean, they're probably both spies. Different.
Fake fighting with each other.
They're having a spy fallout. Anyway, what else do you got?
I got a little synchro from and some more feedback from Meredith as well. That episode, heard really good feedback so far. So that's the last Grimerica episode with Meredith Miller. I got this from Marcus in Instagram. He's like, great interview, great person. What a great synchro too. I met this woman this Friday on a plant medicine retreat. I just dropped by saying hi. In her 30s. She had just came out of a crazy abusive relationship, including rape and psychological abuse. I will send her this interview with links to Meredith. No coincidences. Love the new tunes on the end, he says. Playing it on repeat.
What?
Do you remember what tunes you put on the end of Meredith's show?
No, but it would have been one of Felix's.
Probably in the show notes.
Definitely in the show notes.
Yeah, but yeah, if you like the music or whatever we talk about is usually in the show notes. There's a bunch of ways to support us as well there. So I was gonna save. I saved Project Operation, but decided not to do that one about China and Huawei called the giant spot, the giant shot. What was it called? The shot giant or whatever. I'm going to save that for when we talk about China. And I had another one, but I don't think we need to talk about it now. But it was, I had one prepared, but I have a quote as well from somebody.
A quote from somebody?
Mm-hmm.
What do we got here?
It's the profound quote of the week. Darren, can you guess it? It's the profound quote of the week. Can you guess the human who spoke it or wrote it down? Profound quote of the week.
Did we get an NA shout out? We did. Someone emailed me. Said we got Adam's big shout out to Grimerica.
Oh, wow. Hey, my buddy's saying that the graph shows deaths 800 days out. I don't remember seeing that. Do you remember seeing that?
No, I don't look, really.
Well, you said you looked.
I looked at
thing.
I haven't looked recently other than at the web archive page.
Yeah, I don't know what he's. Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about. He must be talking about something else. He might be talking about the. Anyways,
we're
whatever.
not at 800 days yet, are we? We're
I
only
know.
It would have started March 10th, 2020. So we're at almost 730 days. Well, so it could be an 800-day chart. That wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're
I just
approaching.
didn't see. I looked at it again. I didn't see what he's talking about.
Mind you, that's not true
talk
either.
about
We're not. We're at almost 700 probably.
Yeah. So here's a quote. Guess who this is from? A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those who within the gate freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face in their arguments. He appeals to the baseless that lies deep in the hearts of all men, the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to fear.
Resist we much. Am I supposed to guess?
Yeah, who said that?
George Washington.
No, it's couple thousand years older than that.
A couple thousand. Marcus Aurelius.
Close.
Julius Caesar.
Cicero.
Cicero.
Marcus Tullius Cicero.
Cicero. Isn't he the one that? Fuck. He
Killed
was
Caesar?
one of them. He might have been one of them. I think he was dead though, maybe by then. I can't remember. I went through all that Rome stuff like a while ago. It's all sort of buried already. And I did it through the lens of fiction. But it had real names. Anyway, what else you got?
That's it, I think. Let's wrap it up.
That's all you got. We'll get out of here. Support the show. Grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly, make a one-time donation. We couldn't do this shit without you guys. We can't do it without you. We don't want Graham to go homeless or hungry. Full time in it now. GrimericaOutlaw.ca. Check out that other show.
I did quit my job trying to give this a go.
That's right. Grimerica.ca/support today. One-time donation. Sign up for a monthly. Check out those audiobooks over at adultbrain.ca and enjoy the chat with Cal Washington.
All right, Cal Washington, welcome to Grimerica Outlawed. Thanks for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
Fellow Canadian talking about the law. This will be interesting. I mean, it's one of those things we've sort of broached it a couple times. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around, but I think you're the guy to break this open for us here and talk about your court experiences, the law, the merchant law, and your organization Inpower, which sounds very fascinating. So thanks for spending some time with us.
Yeah, no problem.
I guess, you talk about these, what did you call them? I thought it was fascinating. You're the sovereignty gurus and that kind of thing, right? Like, there's this whole meme about, your title and your name and you're a corporation or whatever. And you've tried a lot of these tactics in the courts. So we'll get into all those details, but I guess for context, maybe a little bit about your story. Like I watched your video on of the Red Pill Expo too. It was interesting to hear how you kind of started to wake up to a lot of the government's antics and sort of, which opens up this whole world of things, right? You must be continually sort of peeling apart the layers. So maybe we can start with a bit of your background and then we can delve into, some of the examples and questions about the law, merchant law, and Inpower.
Well, it started with a divorce, and I was just a normal guy, family man, mortgage, working, paying taxes, doing the, regular thing. And then I ended up in a divorce, and I was compelled to go to court, first through the divorce and then over child support. And so that was my first, I'd been on a couple of traffic things or something in my life, but this is the first time where I'm like, immersed in it. And I sensed that there was something wrong. Like when you're there a lot, you start to see through the cracks. And so I just started asking questions, and, one thing led to another. And, I started to meet some people that had, done things in court and tried their things, and went to a lot of meetings. This whole world, like you said, the whole world opened up that I didn't know was there. There's groups and all that. So I learned a lot. A lot of it was probably not that useful, but I did try just about everything. I mean, I was willing to try anything, and I'm just one of those guys. I'll try it. It was my own case. I have to take the lumps. And so I tried I tried pretty much everything. And once I learned commerce, that's when the game kind of changed, because that was the first time I saw a judge run out of the room. And so I thought, okay, either that's a coincidence or we're onto something. So we just tried it again. And, I got so many different odd behaviors out of judges over quite a few year period on my own cases and then helping others. And I didn't see any of that before. The judges were always in control, but now they were afraid of me. And so that was it was a marked difference that instead of me being afraid of them, they were more afraid of me. And, it just all kinds of odd behaviors. And so, once I got that happening, then it was just, stay on that track, go down that rabbit hole rather than all these other ones, and just let all that other stuff go. Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, how long has this been going on for then? Like how long has this journey been?
Well, the divorce started 20 years ago.
Oh, okay. So it's been a long time then.
Yeah. Like my oldest daughter was 11 when that happened, and she's about to turn 31. So I'm coming up on 20 years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of what I thought. But then I thought, I wonder if it's only been a couple of years. But I mean, I went through a breakup. We didn't go into the courts, but we were at that mediation point or whatever, I guess. And I didn't really get that same sense that you got, because we avoided that, even though it still cost me like thousands and thousands of dollars to even just to stay out of trouble from a common law relationship.
With no kids.
With no kids. And I lost the cat.
You're the ultimate patsy.
And I lost the cat. Like I gave her the cat in the mediation thing as like a carrot. Okay, as an act of goodwill. Okay, you can have Sierra, the cat, that kind of thing. But
without kids, they really don't have a lot on you. Like, that's shocking.
I mean, it still costs a fortune, but I had an experience recently, and I was really thinking about that when I was listening to you talk about your court experiences, because we didn't even get to court in this, but I was involved in sort of a lawsuit type thing. And it was really I guess I'm really naive in my perception of the courts and this whole system, because I was really, really disappointed at how people can just lie. They can just make these claims and lie. And I'm like, I always thought that at least the lawyers were the first step in some kind of like, here, you got to prove. You can't just go and say all this stuff and it be lies. And then it can continue on being lies until when? The very end, when everybody has to throw their evidence on the table. I mean, it's just, I always thought, okay, like there had to be some kind of mechanism of like, you can't say this to a lawyer because the lawyers are double checking all this stuff. But they don't. You can just say whatever the fuck you want. And then, I guess it ends up being that both parties can just keep lying until the final, I don't even know when they have to finally provide proof.
Yeah, that's probably what's happening is claims and claims. Yeah. So it took me a while to figure out that claim is the strongest word in law. And once I read that, I went, oh, now it all makes sense. They're just doing claims. And because another claim doesn't come forward to supersede it, it holds, and it doesn't have to be a true claim.
Right.
This has to be a claim. Yeah. So,
yeah, that's what's so annoying. I mean, I thought there had to be some kind of, double check. But...
No, it's so corrupt in there. And I was shocked at the level of corruption and the dirty tricks they do, and violence, and all that stuff. It's like an organized crime. It's very similar to like a mafia or one of the motorcycle gang type things.
That's what my buddy Tubbs always said. He always said it's a racket. It's a racket, man. They're all going out together. They're all going out for dinner together and buying each other Christmas stuff. And
yeah,
he's like all of them. The lawyers, the judges, they're all in on it.
Yeah. I mean, I did a foreclosure for somebody, and the master and the lawyer he was on almost, they did the foreclosures on a Wednesday. So all the foreclosures were there. So you'd see like 20 cases, and they were on like 18 of them. And so it was the same second mortgage company and these same lawyers that were taking everybody's homes. And it turned out that the master and one of these lawyers, there was two of them, wrote a book together and had a course teaching lawyers how to do foreclosures. So they were partners.
Wow, that's just gross.
Yeah. It's
and
bad.
I mean, I've kind of never really trusted the government too much, but I tell you, during this whole COVID thing, I mean, it's really brought me to this zero level of trust of anything that they're telling us now. So it's interesting to talk to you after, a couple of years of this grossness through the, our health institutions and the government and the courts. Like Darren and I have been talking about these fines and stuff in Calgary, and watching the JCCF take all these provinces to court, and they just keep delaying everything. I mean, it doesn't do, so we don't get charged. They haven't pursued any fines. They just throw them away.
Yeah.
So it's all just a big theater. And then even the real, when the JCCF takes them to court, they just keep delaying it, and they can't provide any data for their case. It's just disgusting. And it just keeps dragging on. Now it'll be like till next summer or whatever, when, the next thing happens.
Oh, it's completely corrupt. I saw stuff, with CRA. CRA was the worst. And they would do stuff like pull a fire alarm in the courthouse. Everybody had to go out, and then they'd go and do their thing. And
what?
Yeah, I'm serious, dude. And the guy would walk in while the fire alarm's going, smiling at us like with one of those, Cheshire cheese smiles, like walk in, 20 minutes later, walk out, fire alarm's still going, like, yeah. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Darren, do you have anything to say before we move into some more details?
No, let's get into the details. I mean, I'm all about not paying taxes and shit. So,
well, I mean, let's keep going on your court experience there, because, you kind of delve down the merchant law route, and which is, I guess, there's other technical names for it, which you kind of mentioned as commerce. But maybe let's explain so people understand. What that sort of, what that is.
So commerce is the commercial system. It's ancient. Hang on a second.
Yeah, no problem.
And once I discovered that, everything started to make sense to me. Like all the anomalies and all the weirdness that I saw, and the reasons why I lost. Because I did the arguments, I read the acts, I stayed up till 2 and 3 in the morning, and then go to work and just back at it, just trying to, self-litigate. And so I thought, when I first got into it, I thought you had to read acts. And so that's what I did. And but I was always losing. And even though I had really good arguments, I learned through commerce that arguing is you automatically lose. Because there's this system where you have to honor things, and so the minute you argue, you go into the dishonor position and you lose. And I didn't know that, but it started to make sense. Now I'm like, now I get it. So the light bulbs went off for me, and everything, all the weirdness and like, why am I losing? Like, it all started to make sense. And so then we just started trying that thing. And then the first commercial instrument I put in on a case that was already running, the judge ran out of the room.
So what do you mean by you say you put a commercial instrument on there? Like,
well, we bonded the case that was already running. I probably appeared on it, 4 or 5 times.
Now this is your case?
This is my case, yeah. And then once we learned commerce, I went to a seminar, and then the light bulbs were just going off every 15 minutes. And so we did the process, I bonded the case, put it in the court, and when they called my case, we were sitting outside the courtroom in the hall, like in the hallway, because we kept getting hassled by the sheriffs for not standing up when the judge came in. So there was some violence and yanking, and so we just thought, okay, we're just going to sit outside until the judge comes in, and then you don't have to stand up, right? And so,
and you weren't standing up as a show of like resistance, or not sort of agreeing with the whole process, or?
I didn't. What we found was that whole standing up, you ended up bowing when you sat down. And they got this big plaque at the behind the judge, and so I'm not sure if it's to bow to the plaque or the judge or both. But
it's not about the standing up; it's about everybody bowing later. Wow.
Yeah, because when you stand up, if you just go and stand up and sit down, you'll see that you bend forward. Yeah.
Next time I'm going to make sure I don't.
Yeah. Well, I never did, but I never got hassled. Never once did I get hassled by the sheriffs. I would always, fumble around, like trying to pretend like I drop a pencil or something. I'm just getting my books together, but they never hassled me. But they hassled some of the people that I went with, and so we just decided to stay outside until the judge was in the room. So they called my case inside the room. I wasn't in there, so then they page out into the hallway. So the case gets called inside. The clerk calls it, and then when nobody comes forward, then they page outside. So I heard my name, so we walked through the door, and the judge ran off the bench, like ran, not exaggerating, he was running. And we didn't know what was going on. Everybody's looking at each other like, what's going on? Like he just bolted, as if somebody came in with a gun. And so we're all looking at each other, the sheriffs, everybody's looking around like, what just happened? Including us, we didn't know. And so that was the beginning of the change for me. That day there was still a long journey, but that's when the tide started going out instead of coming in, and there were still waves and everything, but it was the beginning of the end, where, that was the beginning of how I got out of that whole thing.
Okay. So how do we describe that as being commerce? Like from your journey from there on, as opposed to just normally being sort of in court fighting for yourself?
Well, commerce has to do with commercial instruments, including, the fiat dollars that we have are pieces of paper or plastic with their debt notes. So it's dealing with bills of exchange, debt notes, promissory notes, other commercial instruments. And this goes way back in time. Like they're finding banking type instruments in stone. So we think banking is quite modern, but it's not. It goes way back into antiquity. But I go back as far as sort of the Middle Ages, when they were really expanding and moving more goods using ships, etc. So like this, the 1600s, and that's when all this Admiralty stuff happened. And so you had to have bonds. There was licensed piracy, so you had to have all this paperwork, etc., to keep track of what went missing and who died and all that stuff. So it goes back to that sort of that era when they were expanding the money supply in order to expand the economies more worldwide.
So would
So
that be
there's-
is Admiralty law the same as maritime law?
Well, yes and no. That's if you do some study on that, that kind of fluctuated. Where the Navy kind of took that on, and then the King kind of took it on.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, but there was also this other system on the land, and that's the law merchant.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so that was it was tied to the Admiralty because ships came in and they had goods, and then there was transactions on the land. So there was this focal point, and so these things kind of overlapped and had different entities running the jurisdiction. But by and large, the land was the pie powder courts, which were very informal courts at the international fairs where people would come from all over the place. And so the merchants would adjudicate any problems themselves. And everything moved very quickly. And it was harsh, like your stuff was taken. It was like vigilante kind of thing. But everybody liked it because because it's to protect. If you tried to rip somebody off, then you had to it didn't go well for you. So it was a deterrent, and it also protected the merchants as they came. And so these laws were not written down because it was more similar to the arbitration that is still going on. Those courts still exist. These international arbitration type courts that are not based in any country. It's based on principles and sort of right and wrong and trying to come to an equitable solution. So they had those informal courts, and then in the port towns, they had staple courts, and those were a little more permanent. There was a building, and there was usually the mayor oversaw that, and so it was a little bit more formal, but not formal like the King's courts.
And then how does common law fit into all that? Because that's separate again, but yet it kind of got combined later on, right?
Yeah, in the 1700s, they combined it. They took over the staple courts because everybody was going there. And so the judges were told, and here's the trick. The judges were told in the common law courts to take judicial notice of the law merchant when a commercial issue came in.
So a commercial
To
issue is anything dealing with business?
Yes. And that stayed like that. It's not changed like over the last 300 or 400 years.
Oh, right. Okay. This is where, okay.
Yeah. So what they did in the 30s is they turned us all into merchants using the birth certificate. Therefore, every case that comes in, they're taking judicial notice of the law merchant, but they're not saying anything.
So I'm a corporation? Okay. That's where the Darren is a corporation?
The way I describe it, because that's how I was taught you're a corporation. But the way to really understand this simply is you're a merchant. Then everything starts to make sense when you read like UCC stuff, because you'll see merchants mentioned. So think of yourself as a merchant, and it'll make all the puzzle pieces will fit better.
And then you get like they would the original. They would expedite the merchant cases over the common law, right? So does that still apply now?
Yes, that's how they get away with what's called summary judgment. So in common law, you had to have arduous proof of everything, and every case took forever. But law merchant and somewhat the Admiralty moved very quickly. If there was a dispute at 9 o'clock in the morning, it was settled by noon.
And because like you said, it came from people are shipping perishables around and stuff. So you can't just delay these things.
No, you couldn't delay these things. And the tide, it was based on the tides.
Oh, right.
Because if there was a dispute with somebody on a ship, that ship was leaving at high tide, and you may never not see that in that port again. So they moved very quickly. That you got summons 3 times, and if you didn't show up, then they just went and took your stuff.
So why did they do that in 1930 then, to make us all merchants?
So that they could use law merchant.
So they could against us, and without us knowing that we could use it against them.
Yes. And so your signature, like because you guys are in Canada, if you look up in the Financial Administration Act, the definition of money, you'll see that it says negotiable instruments. Then the next definition after money, M-N, is negotiable instruments. And one of the things in the negotiable instruments is a bill of exchange. Then if you look at a Bill of Exchange Act, Section 30, you'll see that a blank piece of paper with a signature on it can be turned into a bill of exchange, which is a negotiable instrument, which is money. So they are monetizing our signatures left, right, and center because we're merchants and we just don't know it.
Oh, that's fascinating. So you're kind of breaking this open in a way, and they don't want to deal with. They'd rather just walk out of the courtroom and not go after you again, or not bring you back into court, than have to sort of try and play this merchant game with us, I guess.
Yeah, because part of the merchant game is truth in commerce is paramount, and they are always on the lie side, like you said. They're always lying. So you win every time because your claim goes higher because it's based on truth.
Can you give us an example?
Let's say if I was to bond a case, if they had a case of mine and they sent me a summons, so the summons would say, you need to appear at 9:00 in the morning on such and such a date, unless you have lawful cause to face the charges of blah, 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 blah. You've been charged with
driving without insurance.
Whatever. Doesn't even matter. It's all
murder one.
Murder one. Yeah, even murder one, even though that kind of falls into common law, but they monetize that too. So,
but you're less likely to get out of murdering somebody.
Yeah.
But you have an insurance. You have a driving without insurance example to tell, right?
Yeah, that was my. I drove without insurance. I drove without a license plate for 2 years. I got pulled over about once a month. Yeah, I've been in the trenches.
Can I drive without a license plate? Probably not if I have a truck payment, right? You probably have to own that shit outright.
No, that has nothing to do with it.
Interesting. I'd rather not get pulled over all the time though, because when I'm smoking weed, I'm gonna have trouble.
Well, let's get back.
Allegedly. I mean, this is all hypotheticals. This is all hypotheticals.
That's right. So, what was I
summons. So you get the summons.
Yeah. So I could do a lawful process in order to create my lawful excuse as to why I'm not coming. So what I would do, like what I did do, is I see that you claim to be the court. Can you show me where your authority comes from? You have 14 days or 30 days to do so. If you don't, I'm not coming.
Okay.
Because I have created a lawful excuse. You can't show your authority. And I know they can't do it. Well, the only way they could do it is if they use the Hudson Bay Charter, which they won't. They just don't want to open that can of worms. So,
so what do we think their authority is? Like, what is the mainstream perception of their authority? Like,
we think it either comes from the Queen or from the British North America Act, and and if you ask,
not from the Constitution Act or whatever.
That's not been ratified, but that is the revived British North America Act with a different name. The same wording, but different name.
And what does it really come from?
It comes from the courts are Hudson Bay Company courts. That's the only non-native authority that exists. And that document was a perpetual document, perpetual succession, signed by a king. Like it can't be revoked. It's always there.
Unless we succeeded from the Union?
No, it's a corporate charter for a private monopoly to operate as a government.
So what about, you said non-native, what about if I'm an Indian, can I finagle the system even more?
Yep.
Because I just happen to be an Indian.
Well,
and I'm just sort of learning how to finagle. I mean, it's really helped out with some travel during COVID, and whenever I get caught out of quarantine, I just I bring it up, and they just sort of like, okay, we'll call you back.
I got some friends here, and when they got pulled over by the police, one guy he has a picture of the Queen, and then he starts talking Cree, and the cops are like, I'm out of here.
Wow. That's fascinating. It really is. It's hard to wrap your head around, but I'm already understanding it more that I'm talking to you in person than before researching it all. So
do you pay tax?
Do I pay tax?
Do you pay taxes? Do you have to pay taxes?
No, I don't even file.
I haven't filed for a couple of years, but I do pay. I am paying because I have an income. I have an income, and my boss refuses to stop taking the tax off.
Yeah, that's a.
But I've stopped filing because I had a situation somewhat similar to yours. I didn't end up in court, but I did have an agreement through mediation, a court order, and stuff like that for split custody of the kids. But we didn't go that extra step to end up in the courtroom. But then I was paying all this alimony and stuff, which I guess I didn't have a court document that said I had to do that. I was just doing it because, it was the right thing to do. And then I did my taxes, and they're like, you owe us all this money. And I'm like, pardon me? And I said, so I was like, well, but I had this and that. And, I went back and forth. And ultimately, they say I owe them this money. And actually, they just called me about it. So I was like, well, fuck you guys. And then that was for 2019. And in 2020, I didn't file. And 2021's coming to an end. And I was actually today, I was just humming and hawing. Should I just do my taxes and get them caught up? At least my work income taxes, not the side stuff, but at least get the day job income taxes done. And I'm sort of going back and forth on that now. The last time they called me about it, I was like, I thought you guys said Revenue Canada would never call me. And Buddy was like, fuck. And he was like, please go on your Revenue Canada account and check your mailbox. And I was like, okay. Because that scam was going around. So they had that commercial going around saying, Revenue Canada will never call you. And then they call me and they're like, yo, it's a couple grand. And I'm like, hey, wait a second. But so he's like, go on your thing. Now, I'm sure that they think I owe them money. I disagree. But so I haven't filed my taxes in a couple of years now.
And that's because you didn't include the alimony in the original, because it
wasn't ordered by a judge. Basically.
And that's why you can't claim it?
Yes.
Fuck. Well, it is something I want to get into with Cal in a little bit more detail is how to kind of exit the system further exit this
without
system.
Paying taxes at least.
Yeah, of course that's a big part of it. But
I don't mind registering the car.
Because I heard Cal say he's like, this is not an easy road. You can't have a mailbox with your address on it. A bank account is difficult. There's these challenges that we sort of take for granted now.
Yeah, there's a lot of conveniences with the system, and but some of them are benefits from the corporation.
Right.
And so you're buying in. They can make claims based on your actions and what the benefits you're getting from the corporation. Therefore, you have to bear the burden as well. So.
How long do you have to go showing that you don't do that? Or I know there's probably not a specific time limit.
No, there's not.
You know what I mean, though, right? Can I say, I didn't vote last time or whatever?
But you should actually try and get your name off the voter list if you're not going to vote, because if you're on the list, they'll hang on any thread of anything that they can get away with. You have to kind of clean it all up, not leave a shred. And the address is a big one. They're always asking your address, and And the reason why is because the stamp goes to general delivery at the post office, and the government delivers from the post office to your home as a benefit.
So what are some other benefits then that we would have to take into consideration?
Well, any licenses, license is usually, by definition, is something that would normally be illegal, and you're allowed to do it. So what
about, because the license comes from the provincial government, not the federal government. So can you play ball in the province and not in the federation?
You can on certain things, but they will, like, if you're in a court, the court is usually a provincial court. You're very seldom in a federal situation. So they will hang on anything provincial to get jurisdiction. So, like, if you want to get out of the system, you got to be very diligent and give up some.
And you got to take the chance that you're going to get pulled over, and you have to fight it, to a certain extent, right?
Yeah, and if you become like where you cause them so much heartache, and you just don't stop, then they just leave. They just leave me alone, like they just do. That's why I can go on this show. I don't know how many people are watching, and I'm just saying, no, I don't file.
Do you have a plate now?
File. Yeah.
You have a plate on your car now?
No, I don't have a car.
Could you have a car, or would that be sort of where they just keep sort of towing your car or something? They could make your life miserable that way.
They could. I decided not to get one while I still have a $300 million debt owing. I don't want to rock that situation, end up in some kind of weird contract, like changing the terms of the contract. So because I'm dual citizen, I'll probably move to the United States and then get a car.
I was going to ask about a passport. Like, is that one of the benefits that you, like, how would you travel if you're out of the system?
I have a U.S. passport, so I'm fortunate that way. I've never had a Canadian passport. So that's how I was able to travel. I went to England, and then into the States.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that, in my journey, I got that U.S. citizenship, and that took a long time. Like, I had to prove my dad lived in the continental United States for 15 years, and he moved away when he was 19 in the Army and was stationed here in BC. And so there wasn't a lot of wiggle room to prove, and his school burnt down, so all those records were gone. So it was real tough slugging for me to get all that together. And then I finally got my U.S. passport, and then the divorce started. And when I left London, as I was walking away from Buckingham Palace, I saw, I realized that the reason why I went to England was to go to Buckingham Palace, even though I didn't know that was going to happen. I just happened to walk by it. And then I saw all these, this 15-year sort of everything that had to happen in order to get me there. And the passport was one of them, because I wouldn't have been able to fly without that U.S. passport. So it started, 22 years ago, and it culminated in, well, it's still going on, but at that time, 3 years ago, I was in London. So, and I wouldn't have been able to, I don't know how far you want to get into this, but I did some spiritual battles in front of Buckingham Palace, and that was not my intention when I went to London. I was going to look for vintage drums. I'm a drummer. And I just happened to get to where all the, these old famous music stores are. I walked through a park with my phone as with the GPS. And so it showed a park. And so I thought, well, I'll just walk through here, and then I don't have to, do all these zigzaggy streets. And I ended up walking past Buckingham Palace. And when I walked away from there, I went, that's why I came to London, because I didn't want to go. And even when I agreed to go to England, I was like, I said yes. And I went, I don't want to go. In my head, I was like, I don't want to go to England. Like, I hate flying that far. I'm not afraid of flying. I'm a big guy, and I don't, sitting that long, my back tightens up, and I just it's not I just can't do it. So anyway, I went, and then I realized that's why I came here. And then I saw all the things that had to be in place, and I was just amazed at what was transpiring in my life, and I had no real control over it. It was like this path, and I saw it all the way back to my U.S. passport. Wow,
that's fascinating. So before we get too deep into that, I kind of need to wrap around this sort of, I guess I kind of want to get a little bit deeper into exiting the system, and then also like how you're like, do you have any other examples of being a merchant in the court system and seeing them react?
Oh yeah. I did 60 days in remand, and when I got out, I started helping my cellmate. His cases were going on. He was on a marijuana charge. This is before it was legal, just before. And so I bonded his case. So I went up to the court in New West, and I went to the clerk, and I said, I want to put this in the file. And she goes, well, you can't do that. We're not accepting that. And I said, well, this is just a copy, because the actual bond is at the U.S. Treasury. And so this is happening regardless of what you people think or do. But I said that if the judge finds out that I tried to warn him or her, and you got in the way, you're going to hear about it. And so she took off for about 20 minutes, came back. No, we're not taking this. Okay, great. And so the next day, it was his appearance, and it was the first one I'm going to, because I just got out, a week or so before that. And I walk in the courtroom. A guy comes up to me, kind of white hair. Are you here on the Perry case? I said, I don't want to answer questions. I said, I don't think I have to answer any of your questions. Are you here on the Perry case? Well, I'm here to help. Well, that stuff that you brought in here yesterday, that's all bunk, And he stormed off. So how does he know about what? So they obviously took a copy of it and were aware of it, the whole courthouse. So I go into the case. They bring him in. He's in the glass thing. And they're asking him questions. And he's turning around at me. And I'm going, yes, no, yes, no. Actually, no, I should back up, because there was an appearance, that first appearance. This was the second appearance. So the first appearance, I go into the courtroom. That guy that came up to me is sitting in the front row, but in the gallery. He wasn't up front. And I still don't know who he is. And so the judge comes in. It was a woman judge. And I know for a fact that he's appeared on this, numerous times. Because, I was his cellmate, so he would go to court. And so it's probably like 5 or 6 times that I know about that he appeared on this. She comes in and goes, it turns out that my husband and is partners with your lawyer, and I have to recuse myself. So she steps down. The next judge comes in, just livid. I mean, he is blowing a gasket. Red in the face as he comes in.
Deal with you guys.
Oh, he was mad that he had to even participate in this, and basically adjourns it. So my buddy phones me from jail and goes, well, that was weird. He says, yeah, and my lawyer fired me today. That guy that was sitting in the front? So the guy that came up to me was my cellmate's lawyer, and he stepped down at the same time, and the judge stepped down. So this is what I'm saying. I saw all this behavior. So the next time I'm going in there, there's this older judge in there. And that's when he was looking back at me, and I was going, yes, no. So the judge goes, you keep turning back to that gentleman in the back. Would it be helpful if you guys could talk? And the prosecutor, no way, you can't do that. And the judge went, hand up like this. Are you telling me what I can and cannot do in my courtroom? No, Your Honor. Good. Is there a place where these guys can meet? Well, they said, he can go down into the cells where where the lawyers talk through the glass for incarcerated. So he goes, okay, stand down, and you'll go down to the sheriff's office, and then they'll take you into the room where you can talk to him through the glass. So I go down to the sheriff's office, and no, we need your cell phone number, and we'll get him to call you out. I said, no, that's not what the judge said. Well, that's all you're doing. I said, okay, I'm done. Walk back up to the courtroom. Judge comes in. Did these guys get to meet? No, he wouldn't give blah, blah. And the judge hand up again. Okay, they're going to meet in here. You can't do that. Are you telling me again what I can and cannot do? Well, he might pass a weapon. So he goes to me, sir, do you mind if the sheriff searches you just to make sure you don't pass something? I said, no, that's fine. I don't have any weapons or anything. So he says, okay, everybody out of the courtroom. Those guys sit in the back. Sheriff, you need to sit at the front. I don't want you listening to them, and they can have as much time as they want in my courtroom.
Why was he doing that, I wonder?
Because I had a bond on it. I saw all kinds of behavior like that. He had two cases running. He had one in provincial court and one in Supreme Court, and we kept trying to switch them because one was predicated. This was his second offense.
So that means you posted bails for him type thing. So basically you've got an interest in the case.
I have the most interest in the case because my bonds were quite large, and I had the U.S. Treasury as the collector.
So if I couldn't just say me and Graham gets in some trouble, the judge wouldn't do that if I was didn't post bail for Graham, but I'm just in the courtroom, say giving him hand signals.
Yeah, you would not get that. It was the bond that did it.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah, because there's no other explanation for and there's a lot more stories of this type of thing. In Port Coquitlam, I walked in there one time. I was late because I was working, and so I showed up around just after lunch, and a guy comes running up to me again. Where were you this morning? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't have to be here. Well, we couldn't call the case unless you were here. I'm like, what? This is the type of stuff I saw. So do you mind going talking to the judge? And I said, yeah, I'll go talk to her. My buddy's in cells underneath or wherever it is. And so I go into the room. She stands the case that there's a case running. She goes, okay, stop this one. I need to talk to that guy. Instantly, boom, we need to stand this down. You come forward. And then she wanted me to cross the bar. And I'm like, no, I'll talk to you from here. Well, we can't hear you. I said, I'll talk louder. Because I was trying to figure out if they were trying to trick me or not. And I just didn't. Anytime they ask me to do something, I ain't doing it. And that's just how I roll. So I talked louder. And she said, well, you be here this afternoon. We want to call the case around 2. I said, yeah, I can make that.
Because you've got it bonded, so they need you to be there.
Yep. Apparently.
And then how did that case go?
They tried to give him the out. He ended up doing. He lost on the provincial one because he was under a conditional sentence for selling weed before. So he broke that contract. So that one was a hard one to get out of. And then on the Supreme Court case, I think they stayed it or something like that. So he ended up doing. He was sent to a camp, but they gave him the option. They gave him an out if he would just sign that he was mentally something or other. They would just let him go, but he didn't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I said, they're giving you an out. They have to save face, and it doesn't mean anything. But he didn't want to do that, so he did went to a camp for a
couple months or something.
Graham's going to the camp soon.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm going to a different camp.
Yeah, the COVID camp.
I'm going to the one for I'm going to the one for people that need to go there for their own safety.
Yeah, this was minimum security. They would go and do. They would go and work in the community, and that kind of stuff.
So that's okay. That's some good examples. And then so just to expand a little bit more on exiting the system, like not paying your taxes and all that, right? Like how far do you, like, can you just stop filing?
If you don't file, you don't have to pay. Like it's a voluntary system. It's the filing that gets you in the contract. Now they have laws, so-called statutes, the Income Tax Act, that says you have to file. But that's not been given royal assent, and they can't prove it. So you have to do a lawful process in order to get them into that default position. So get them to prove, and what you do is say, I will gladly file and pay taxes if you can prove that I have to.
By the royal assent. Like, where does your authority come from?
Where's the authority come from? Show me in 30 days. If you don't, then leave me alone. And they will push on you. They pushed on me, and it backfired on them, and now I'm done. So
if the tax man calls Graham, he should just call you.
No,
you don't want to be a part of this.
I don't have the time for that, and but you can learn. Like, you're just asking me general questions.
Yeah, totally.
I'm not telling anybody to not pay taxes.
Yeah. No, it's totally just out of curiosity. Like how
So the whole thing here in Canada, even though it's a leading country, it's a scam. Like, we don't have a constitution.
Well, don't we have the charter, and the Charter of Rights doesn't count at that level?
None of it, because you have to form the country in the first place. So the BNA Act did that in 1867, but then Victoria, who was on the front of the thing in front of Buckingham Palace, she repealed that act in 1893 by removing the enacting clause and Section 2. A lot of people go on the Section 2, but it's really removing the enacting clause, which, I blah blah blah, in front of Lord
the
spiritual
Queen,
and temporal and blah 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 blah. Because of my authority, I enact the following. Well, if you remove those words, are what gives the act the authority. If you remove those words, then you have just removed that authority. And so Trudeau, the first one, tried to fix that in the 80s. That's how they came up with this Constitution Act, which is just the BNA Act under a different name, because they couldn't revive the BNA Act because it had been repealed by a queen.
Okay. So we're still sort of a Commonwealth. We're still under the Queen. That's why we're not a separate country, because we can't be, because we're still under that bitch.
We are a colony still, with very loose and fraudulent agreements with the native people, and there's a corporation running as if it's a country based on the Hudson Bay Charter.
Right. Okay. Fuck.
So
she happens to own that as well, because originally,
can I sue the company for something?
What's that?
Can I sue the company for something?
Yeah.
Right. Now we're talking.
It's a company. It's a company like every other company.
That's what I'm thinking. So if there's a company and I'm, maybe I can sue them for something. Like, I don't know. I come up with a bunch of shit, especially being an Indian. Maybe
especially during mandatory jab season.
Especially during mandatory, it's a couple seasons. It's many.
Well, be careful
seasons.
of the mandatory, because mandatory is not a strong word. It's still voluntary. Everybody that took the jab,
it's going to be mandatory
on their own steam and decided to take it.
Well,
some of them were coerced with threats, but they still had to choose to do it.
True. So, but I could come up with something. I could come up with something.
Well, if I was Native, I'd be going after the Indian Fund.
What's that? I can Google that after.
Apparently, because I haven't studied it because I'm not Native. I've studied it a bit, but apparently there was an Indian Fund, because there was an agreement of a 60. I heard this from a Native elder, and I haven't verified it, but there was supposed to be a 60-40 split with the corporation and the natives, and they kept it in what was called the Indian Fund, And then they created this consolidated revenue fund, which is just a big slush. So you can't tell what is what. But I know they would have to keep track of that Indian fund. So most of the bursaries and, when you want to start a business or all that, most of that comes from that fund.
Interesting. So, oh man, there's so much to talk about. It's so fascinating. So, where does the King James Bible fit into this? And like, when does the ultimate authority fit into, like, the Queen? Like, our authority in Canada comes from the Queen still, I guess, with their authority, and then hers, it comes from the King James Bible.
It comes from her oath, which is to defend the King James Bible, and that's why the Bibles are in the courthouses.
I can't believe it's still like that. I mean,
yeah, I know they took it out of school. Like when I went to school, we had Bible readings in school, elementary mostly, but I can remember that, and prayer. We said the Lord's Prayer, and we sang "God Save the Queen" when I was little. They took all that out, but the Bible's still in the courts.
And is there anything special about the King James version?
Well, that's if you go with technicalities, the 1611 King James version is the one that she swore on. So technically, that's the only one that she has to uphold. So there's a lot more Bibles out there, but we noticed a difference. Because a guy told me about the 1611. I was at this house meeting, and there was a bunch of us there just, sharing information and stories. And he said, "You got to get a 1611 King James Bible." And I'm like, "Wow, what difference does it make?" I'm using the King James, like whatever. And we noticed that they kind of ignored most of the Bible verses. Then I happened to see, actually, I have it right here. I happened to see one time. And I saw, oh, that's that Bible that guy was talking about. So I just went, I'll buy it. And I started reading it, and it was different. And I went, okay. So then we started using that when we used Bible verses in our documents, and they started paying attention. In
your court documents, you mean?
Yep. They started paying attention. So we knew, okay, there's something about that particular
version, because that's the one the Queen swore her oath on.
Yep.
Is that before they changed the alphabet?
Yep. So then they changed the alphabet, and
in the 1700s they changed the alphabet, or it must have
I don't know when. I think it's more recent, because like Vancouver is only 150 plus, ish years old. And I see the V's on some of the buildings that, when they're done in stone, where it's supposed to be a U. So it's more recent than what we think, but I can't find where it happened.
I was reading a book, and the F's in the original book, and this is from 1796, I think, or 1786, and it still had the F's instead of S's. So yeah. I was thinking it had to be at least in the 1800s, I guess. Yeah. And I wondered why. Why would they change the? I felt like there's a reason why they wanted to discount the previous language or something like that, because it doesn't seem like any meaningful change. Otherwise,
no. Like what difference is the symbol we know as V being a U and the symbol we know as U being a V? Like, what's the difference? But I can tell you, every verse in this book was affected.
Wow, that's interesting.
So put that in your pipe and smoke it, because that can't be a coincidence. This was the target.
And that makes it so that nobody can. So when you quoted those, you were changing the U's back to V's or whatever?
Yeah. So in the authorized version, we have it's more the modern, U. A U is like that, and a V is like that. But back in the 1600s, it was the opposite. And F's were S's in some cases. I's and J's were interchanged. But I haven't gone through the whole book, but I have not found a verse yet that was not affected, at least by one letter or something. And that's quite an amazing thing, because it's quite a large book. But to find that every verse was affected by that alphabet change, that tells me that was the target.
Yeah. They must have had to pick 3. Like, they obviously didn't want to change too much because they can't change the meaning
Can't
of
change the
everything. And all
words.
that. So,
Yeah, they can't change the words. So the words are the same. If you read the authorized version and the 1611 version out loud, it's the same words. Spellings are different.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of leads us more into like your experience in the Buckingham Palace then. And then how did you see your path from the US passport all the way through to this? Like, talk a bit more about the spiritual battle then.
Well, when I came out of court after the 60 days, they owed me $300 million based on a promissory note. And so we, spent months and months trying to collect that. So we tried a couple of different things. They ignored everything. Then we went to a seminar in New York, upstate New York, and learned a bunch more commerce, and came back and wrote a document. It took months to do it because, we had to study it and change it from US and, add to it and make it Canadian. And then I got it stamped at the US consulate because I'm a US, I'm an American. And it just about blew up the parliament. They panicked. And we didn't know why they panicked so strongly. But then months later, we found that they had sold that note. And then we came in with a claim after the fact. And the U.S. consulate said, confirmation of an instrument, and put the big rivet through it, and boom, big American eagle. And so they were caught. They owed $300 million. And they put it in the newspaper, and it was on the, radio programs. And so they admitted to it. They just didn't pay. So long story short, I went after, I kept escalating. Then I went to the feds. The clerk of the Privy Council stepped down. Provost Marshal, probably he gave a month's notice. Clerk of Privy Council stepped down on the day he got his mail. And it was in Maclean's and what's that national newspaper?
Post. The Globe and Mail.
Globe and Mail, yeah. So, they had articles, and they were trying to figure out what would make this guy leave like that because he was so powerful. What scared him so much? And here it is, 3 dudes sending paper in the mail, and because he left on the day that he got his default. Provost Marshal left about a month after that, and the Governor General, which was Michelle Jean at the time, she stepped down about a month after that. So once I got to that stage, I had them all in default. I was led to go after the Queen, stop going after the money, because that was the motivation was $300 million is $300 million. And so I agreed to that and went after the Queen. So I wrote a writ of mandamus, which is a prerogative writ. And I had all of the defaults of all the people from the clerk, clerk of the court, the chief judge, the attorney general in BC, and all the feds, including the prime minister, had them all in default. And so I sent her a document about that thick to Buckingham Palace and said, you got 30 days to pay that money. And I had 4 other grievances in there. So she went into default. So what happened was it seemed my spiritual authority went way up. And I couldn't quite make the connection. Except one time I was trying to stretch a hip, like just doing a stretching, and I was really stuck. And I got this thought in my head: use the mandamus to get rid of that thing in your hip. And I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, what does that have to do with my hip? And where would like, I couldn't fathom that I would even have a thought like that. Like, there was no context for it. It's just like a thought, boom, use that. And I'm like, that's just dumb. So I did it. Boom, hip moved. And I went, okay, what is going on here? What is going on? And so I had to deal with that because that's outside of my logical thinking. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I've just learned, because I've been through so much, that, you have to take things, even though you think it's a coincidence, it might not be. And, because I'm kind of geared that way. I'm like, oh, that's a coincidence. Nah, I don't buy in. And even in my own process, I had to, when the judge ran out of the room, I'm like, that had nothing to do with me. Like, I wasn't thinking like that, or like we caused that. After the fact, I went, I think we might have caused that. But at the time, I'm going, oh, where's he going? What? Didn't think that way, right? And so I ended up writing that document. She went into default, and then I got invited to speak in England. It was about 3 years ago, and I was on a Zoom call like this, and she said, we're having a bunch of experts on 5G. Would you like to come and speak? And I went, yeah, that's enough notice. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I'm like, no, I don't want to go. And everybody else on the call was like, did he just say yes? Like, because everybody knows he doesn't want to go to England. And so I ended up going. And like I said, I ended up with a day off, and I went to look for vintage drums and ended up in front of Buckingham Palace.
Did you find the drums?
So, yeah. And because I had already been through that whole mandamus thing, and I had become an adept spiritual warrior, if you want to put it that way, I came across, I took the train from Brighton to London, and I got off, started walking towards the park so I could get over to where the music stores were. And I just saw Royal this or Royal that, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if this is Buckingham Palace. It doesn't look all that impressive. I was down on the side of it. And I got around the front, and then I recognized the gates because, I'd seen it on TV and whatever. And I went, oh, yeah, it's Buckingham Palace. So they were changing the guard. So I walked over there and, filmed it and blah, blah, blah. And then got tired of that and started on my way back through the park, walking directly away from Buckingham Palace. And there was this monument out in front of Buckingham Palace, right in front of the gates. And, there's a lot of monuments in London. Some of them are creepy. This was a creepy one. And I'm like, oh. So I'm walking by it, and I look back to see who was on the front of it, facing away from Buckingham Palace. And it was Victoria. I recognized, the face right away. And I got the nauseous feeling, which tells me there's, for me, it tells me there's spirits. So I started using the mandamus and declaring and shutting it all down. And it was like a big portal opened up. Like, they were all very dormant and quiet. And then all of a sudden it was just like this massive amount of spiritual activity, put it that way. And I had no fear because I'm an adept. I'm not an expert, but I had no fear anyway. And so I was shutting it all down. Brought in archangels. I know how to do that. And then I was led to go. I saw on top of this monument, they had just freshly painted it gold, and it was quite a gaudy looking gold. And they had the same paint on the little spikes on Buckingham Palace. And then I saw the same gold on a building. There was kind of a monument sticking up over top of the buildings, but I could see it in the distance. So I was led to go over there. And it was the Parliament buildings. And so I did some declarations over there. There was another building that I was led to, which had no markings on it. It was all black windows, no signs on it. It was about 4 stories. It was quite a large building, like width-wise and length. But there was no markings on it. But something was going on in there. And then my partners texted me, asked me how it's going. And I said, oh, I'm in the seat of evil. And so they started praying. And Jenny, my friend Jenny, can see, like she's a seer. She said, there's a circular thing that you need to find, and they've been doing unspeakable things there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So I'm looking for this thing. They're in the United States, and I'm in London, and they're doing recon, and I'm the soldier on the ground. And so I couldn't find something. I saw a round pond. I thought, that's not it. And then I started walking back towards Buckingham Palace. That's when I noticed that monument was circular. I didn't pay attention before.
The Victoria one, or?
Huh?
The Victoria one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I could see it from a long way away because even the streets go around it and the light posts, so that it's concentric circles around this thing. So I went, I'm right back where I started. So now I got up on the thing and I'm really shutting it down. And then I left. I took all kinds of pictures. And so I was flying home the next day, and as we're coming into, I flew out of Gatwick. And as we're coming into Toronto, making our approach, all passengers must get off this plane here. All luggage must come off this plane. I went, oh, okay. Whatever I did in London yesterday, they know about it and they know who did it because it's camera there. So it confirmed that what was happening was real. So they emptied a 747. All the luggage came off. And then they emptied a second plane that came out of Heathrow. Same thing. Both 747s, all the luggage comes off. And you don't see that where a large plane like that, all the luggage comes off. And I think that plane landed before ours because no passengers came to get their luggage, and theirs came off first. So I think they thought I might have had an accomplice that flew on a different plane, and then we could swap my phone, because they may have thought that I had some kind of gadget in this thing that did something there. Who knows? But anyway, it was very intense at the customs, like at the carousel. They were frantically pulling luggage off. There was this constant announcement every 2 or 3 minutes about, all luggage, all passengers must clear customs here. And if you went up and asked any questions, you got the don't ask any, very abrupt. They were definitely looking for something or somebody, and they were intensely looking for it. Okay. And so I go to the
customs
automated thing where the camera comes out. It's the first time I saw that. And I can't answer the question, how long are you staying in Canada? Because I'm flying on it.
Still muted.
You're muted, yeah.
I couldn't answer that question because I live in Canada, and that wasn't an option. So I had to cancel my declaration and go see an agent. Now, the agents know that they're looking for somebody, and so I'm the only one that goes up to an agent. Everybody else cleared this thing. I get a yellow card. Everybody else, like on a whole 747, has white cards from the automated thing, and I have a yellow card, and he puts the marks on it for searching, because I've been through that before. And then he goes, good luck. In other words, I wouldn't want to be you. And so I had my declaration, and I'm still waiting for the luggage to come off, because it was just hundreds of bags. I mean, there was hundreds of bags all over the place. I've never seen anything like it. And frantic, sweating airport workers trying to get all the bags off the carousel, and it was just a mayhem. And so I saw my bag, and walked over to it quickly as if I was in a hurry. My flight was supposed to have left into Vancouver, and I get my bag, and then I go out to the door where they, when you hand the card, and then that's where you get searched. I'm the only one with a yellow card, and I hand it to her, and she puts it on her chest with all the other hundreds of white cards. I mean, hundreds of them, and says thank you, and I walk by her. We go upstairs. There was by the time I got up there, there was about 8 or 10 of us that were flying to Vancouver. I didn't know them, but we all ended up in the same spot. And so we go up to, we have to check back in, because we're on the unsecured side of the airport now. And so we get upstairs, and upstairs didn't know anything was going on. They're like, what are you people doing here? And why do you have your bags? So upstairs didn't know what was going on downstairs. And they said, your flight left like 5 minutes ago. So she gets on the phone. No, they held your flight. So they quickly put our bags back in the system, and they had to cut us in the TSA line, and we flew home.
Wow. So any repercussions from the spiritual aspect after that, or how do you, I want to talk about the Inpower thing, but also, the Watchers and how the Watchers fit into this whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, is that a higher level? Is that a higher level than the King James version?
Oh yeah. Yeah. These are beings that are, I'm not sure their full extent is not described, because I think we're not supposed to know. There's certain information we're not allowed to know. So a lot of this is by, trial and error and gleaning and piecing things together. Apparently the Watchers are here as some kind of representative, almost like jail guards.
Yeah.
And because I think this is a prison, and we were introduced here. Adam was put here to settle an old claim, going back to claims.
Huh.
And that's the Luciferian claim that he is God. So they were remanded, and we were put here in order to settle that claim. And we're at the final stages of that, and that's why their moves are so ridiculous and desperate, because their time is up and they know it.
Wow. So the Watchers, are they the same as because I keep thinking they're Nephilim or the giants, and the Watchers are the same thing, but
well, there was some apparently there were some original Watchers, if you read the Book of Enoch, and they bred in for whatever reason to the daughters of Adam, and that's where the Nephilim came in. There was these half, like a lot of giants, and then half animal, half man type beings. So a lot of that Greek mythology is actually real, and those
Egyptian gods.
Those beings existed, and they're finding them, remains of them.
One of our friends just had experience with some of those gods, like visions and stuff. So it's interesting how you say they're coming back. He had an experience in Egypt a few months back. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they never left. Like, this is a prison, so they're a lot of them are underground, and some of them are in different like dimensions, if you want to put it that way. Like, we can't see them, and then there's the inbred ones, and right now they're most of them are hard to detect from the DNA of Adam, because they've got that genetics down, but there's parables about the wheat and the tares, and the wheat and the tares are the same. Like, the plant looks the same until harvest time, and then one turns into wheat and one turns into this ugly plant. So they're trying to block, what's happening cosmically, etc., because we're about to, like, the truth is about to be dropped on us all, and they can't hide anymore.
Why do I have a note here? NOL before the Watchers. Notice of liability before the Watchers. Is that something that you talked about before? Like,
yeah. Well, we
is that what you're doing in the court? Like, is that pretty much what you're doing?
Yeah, we're putting that. I'm assuming that the Watchers have some kind of jurisdiction just above Earth, if you want to put it that way. So it's probably the closest jurisdiction that we need to deal with. You can go all the way to God, but generally speaking, in commerce and in law, you want to go in order of. You don't just jump. Like, I didn't just jump to the Queen. I went through the stages.
Ranks. Yeah, just like you said, it happened in the Bible, where it's. Or I don't know if it was the Bible or which gospel it was, where you start with your, you start with your neighbor one-on-one, then you bring witnesses, and then you go to the next sort of level, and
exactly. And those are commercial principles as well, from Law Merchant. everything was done that way. So you can start to see that there's underlying spiritual principles that are infused into commercial activities. It's almost like commerce is a mirror image or a negative, like the old negatives of pictures of biblical or spiritual, not necessarily just biblical, but spiritual principles.
And maybe that's why they wanted to leave you alone, because then you don't take it to the next level.
Yeah. It's to the point, like when you said, do I have any fear of spiritual attack? No, they try and stay out of my way. I don't go looking for them either, but it's to the point where I don't know how to say this. If there's a dispute or some spirit is making some kind of claim on somebody or something, usually if I show up, they instantly shut up, and there's no argument. I used to have arguments, and they would challenge my authority. Now it's more like, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but it's almost like God walks in the room.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a, they just like, whoop.
So when did you start up the Inpower thing then?
Well, that, because of what happened with the $300 million document and all that stuff, my friend Josh made a movie about smart meters and called Take Back Your Power. And one of the guys that was, working with me on all this law stuff, he's also a film editor. So Josh had all the stuff in the can, but he didn't know how to put it together. So I introduced him to my friend. And so they put this movie together, and then he was showing it, and it was, it won a bunch of awards, and it's very, very well done. And it really exposed the whole smart meter, the dangers of it. But what he found was, if he showed it in theaters, people were walking out in a negative state, like, oh, we're all going to die. And so he called me up and said, is there something you can do, as a solution? And so I looked at what they were doing, and I went, oh, okay, well, they're just moving commercially. Everything's a tacit agreement, and they give notices and offers. I said, yeah, this is all commercial. So I know exactly what to do. And so that's where so I took the document that had caused all the angst with the government, and I extracted a bunch of things out of that and wrote a separate document, which became the Notice of Liability.
And then Inpower is actually considered a church, right? Wouldn't
it's a church. Yeah, so Inpower kind of came about. So I wrote the document, I sent it to Josh, and he had about 20 people that wanted to do something. They had a group that were meeting, and he said, can you come down and talk about this? And I said, no, I'm not a public speaker. I'm not that. You can just have the document. But he convinced me to come down. So I went down there, and I'd done a couple of speaking engagements before, but usually I lost people. Like they would kind of shut off, especially if I started talking Nephilim, and like I could just barely touch that subject, and then they would just instantly shut down. So, but this room lit up, and they were like, I'd never seen anything like it. So within a month, somebody in Detroit got the document, and she flew us out there, and we did the same thing there. And, it was a larger group. And so all of a sudden, and then I did Kelowna, which is middle of BC kind of thing. I happened to be working up there at one of the wineries, and they said, yeah, there's a meeting. Can you go and speak? I'm like, oh, after work and living in a motel and all that. So I went, and again, the room kind of lit up. So that's how Inpower kind of came about. It was just sort of came
really through just teaching people about the Notice of Liability.
Yeah.
And then you've got here, the ability to claim authority over smart meters, vaccinations, and 5G deployments. So, for example, could we get a vaccine exemption from Inpower?
No, it's more of a commercial process where they're offering the vaccine, and it's an offer. They're pushing it, but it's still an offer.
So is that vaccination category on there from COVID, or was that on there before?
It was on there before. Actually, we were going to come out with the 5G one, and we knew from the 5G that they had to have the Internet of Bodies activated in some way in order for 5G to do what it needs to do. And they had a couple of different options. Like you could get a chip in your hand. And there was people already doing it, and all your banking stuff was there. There was a couple of different ways of doing it, and vaccine was one of them.
Wow.
So we did,
this is before COVID. So
So when COVID came out, I went, there it is. They're going vaccine. And because I was wondering, how are they going to get everybody vaccinated? Because we just don't buy in like that, right? And so that's what they did. And I saw it coming. So way ahead of time. As soon as that whole COVID thing started, and if you understand 5G, it can change the air and water molecules so that you can't breathe. So like people falling over like that, that's from 5G. And almost all of the major COVID outbreaks were just where they had just installed 5G. So Wuhan was one. There was a small town in Italy. That was the next one. New York. And blah, 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 blah. So it was definitely following where 5G was installed at that time. And they didn't have enough to really get it to go. But I think what their problem is that Trump was in office and they didn't think that they could beat him with an election. So I think they went a year early.
Well, they could always cheat on an election.
Well, they ended up doing that, but I think they were literally trying to beat him, because that was the rhetoric on the TV. Like, how are we going to beat Trump? How are we going to beat Trump? And they were looking for candidates. But in the meantime, I think they went with the COVID a year early because they didn't have enough 5G worldwide up. And so that's why they had to fake a lot of stuff, a lot of mannequins. Like it was bad. They couldn't get the deaths that they really needed.
So how does the notice of liability come into vaccinations now that COVID's here then? Because you were dealing with this prior. So you're saying, like, I want authority over vaccinations now that it's going global.
Well, regardless of what it is, commerce works a certain way. So you get somebody into a contract. I see your offer to vaccinate me. I will gladly get vaccinated if you can prove that it's safe. And I have an affidavit here that says it's not safe. So you have to rebut that affidavit and you have to swear to it. So this is where the truth in commerce comes in. If you don't and you go silent, then it will be taken as agreement. And then if you force me or coerce anybody in my indirect or direct care, which these are words that are used on purpose to make it could be anybody in the world, and you force them, then I'm going to charge you X amount of dollars per day.
And you have an affidavit template in there already?
Yep. And so it's money that is the problem. The reason why the judges were acting like that is because there's a bond. Their bond didn't cover my bond because I could just write. I'm just using ink and I can write zeros till my hand bleeds. And their bonds don't cover it. And so if I was to liquidate the bond, the U.S. Treasury would go after their bond, and when their bond was extinguished, like got all that, now we're going after your personal assets, and they know how to collect. That's what was spooking the judges. I mean, this is all I had to learn.
Yeah, piece it all together later on. Yeah. So in other words, if I'm silent and they come to the door to jab me, it's kind of my fault, is what you're saying in a way, because I didn't serve them a notice of liability, that I have an affidavit and I need them to prove it's safe.
Well, you could say it that way, but if you conditionally accept, the keys to this is conditionally accept. So it's based on conditions, just like when you bought a house, you had conditions on it. I need to get financing. Or based on an inspection.
I guess just a little bit more about the Inpower and how, you've sort of been answering that, how that whole thing works, especially now that COVID's here. I mean, the government, like you say, they're criminals, right? I mean, they're a bunch of criminals, and now we need ways to sort of get around this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, Canada is unique because it's a corporation and you can see it. And so they don't have a lot of legal ground to do what they're doing. And a lot of the natives do know this, which is why they can shut down pipelines, etc. They know exactly what's going on. And I can read it in some of their rhetoric, because they're not spilling the beans, but when they say stuff like it's not going to be business as usual around here and that type of things from some of the native leaders, I know that they know what's going on. If they mention the Hudson Bay company, then I know that they know what I know. And so that all said, there's numerous ways to attack, if you want to use that word, what's going on here, because they just don't have the authority. It's all based on the Hudson Bay Charter, and the Hudson Bay Charter, they're allowed to make their own laws and enforce them. They were allowed to have courts. They were allowed to have allowed to use the Royal Navy and the Royal Army, and they had cannons, artillery, etc. at their forts. And they had jails. Everything that a country would normally have, this monopoly corporation got. And but there's a caveat in there. The laws that they make cannot be repugnant to the common law of England, and they all had to swear oaths to make sure that stayed in, and they're still swearing oaths today to the Queen. Now that went on for 200 years. It was a long time, and they were quite notorious. Bad, just corrupt. Even Prince Rupert was a privateer, like a licensed pirate and a slave trader. So the first governor of so-called Canada was a pirate and a slave trader. How do you think that went? And it's been that way ever since. So they couldn't get this document back. So after 200 years, the United States had bought Alaska, and we're looking at buying out the Hudson Bay company. And they had quite a bit of land all the way over, almost to where you guys are, and all around the Hudson Bay, and down into where the United States is now. And so they were looking to buy, and so Victoria created the Dominion, which is the British North America Act in 1867. Part of that was they had to build a railroad, and that bankrupted the 4 provinces. And so they had them in their clutches, formed the Dominion so that the Hudson Bay Company could surrender the charter, the deed, which they did the following year. So 1868, they passed the Rupert's Land Act, which was the terms of the surrender of the charter. So that they formed the Dominion in order to get that charter back, is what happened. So it took 2 years to get it done because they didn't tell anybody, and there was the Red River uprising, and some people liked the Hudson Bay Company because they were making money off of it in some way. They didn't want things to change. So around 1870 is when they passed this document to Victoria, her successors and heirs. That was the wording. So Victoria got ownership of this corporation that could run as a government, which now I'm assuming Elizabeth has.
Which seems to be the timing of the residential schools. And didn't that whole thing escalate in the 1850s, Darren, or 1860s? I mean, this started in
1880s.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, they had, like I said, from what I understand, and I didn't research, there was an agreement with this corporation, a 60-40 split. And but they had to be what was called Indians at the time, which meant you had to speak your language, do your dance, and something else. I can't remember what it was, but
that's maybe why they wanted to take the Indian out of everybody.
That's why they did it. So they created this status Indian, and then they said, stop speaking your language, and they beat you to so that they didn't have to pay that money. Jesus. That's what it's always about money. And why I'm saying, like, when you go into commerce and it becomes about money, that's when they pay attention.
Yeah. Fascinating. Darren, do you got any questions? Last minute questions or?
No, this has been fun. I'm looking forward to egging Graham into pushing his luck.
Yeah, no, it's been good, Cal. Anything else you want to mention before we wrap it up? I think it's been a lot for people to try and digest.
A lot to digest. Yeah, the Hudson Bay Charter is the most important document to really understand. The Trudeau tried to fix that in the 80s, 82, by resurrecting the BNA Act that was repealed and giving a new name. And they've been backdating that name all the way back to 1867. So eventually, as new generations come up, they won't talk about the British North America Act at all. It'll just be as if it was always here. But the Queen, they couldn't come up with any way to give this thing any authority, because the British North America Act creates Parliament and the legislatures. So without that document, there is no Parliament. There was no Parliament after 1893. So they couldn't pass it. So they got the Queen to come over. René Lévesque said, no effing way. And didn't want anything to do with the Queen. And so they agreed that they had this, what was called the Kitchen Accord. And it was in the middle of the night in some kitchen. And René Lévesque had gone to bed, and he said, wake me up if something is happening. And they didn't, because he was like the stick in the mud. And so they got 7 premiers to go along with this thing. And they went ahead. So the Queen came over. She was the only one that could give it any authority. But in her proclamation, she had, again, a subject. So she said, to all my loving subjects, which, if you just thought about that for a second, we're supposed to be a country. Why are we subjects of the Queen? I'm sure she wasn't just talking about, English people that were living here at the time, and all those who these presents may affect, or something along those lines. And when she says it, it's all wonderful. They want to have this Constitution Act and the Charter and the Bill of Rights and blah 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 blah. And then in the statement that gives it the authority, she said, "This will all come into effect, comma, subject to 59 thereof, comma, on this date, April whatever it was, 1982." It's that subject that has to be removed in order for this to happen. Just like when you buy a house, once the subjects are removed, then the transaction can happen. So that subject was a language issue regarding Quebec, where parents can have their children taught in the language of their choice, and Quebec refused to sign off on that. And until they do, that all is in limbo.
But that was still the same year that Trudeau tried to reinstate the BNA Act.
But like I said, it's all good except that subject has to be removed.
Yeah.
In order for it for the authority, she said it will come into force and effect, subject to 59 thereof of the charter, and 59 sends you to 23A or something like that, and that's where the language thing is. And then when you go back to section 59, it says once that is satisfied and Quebec signs off on a language issue, then 59 has to be removed from the act renumbered, and there has to be another proclamation.
Wow, that's interesting.
So none of that has happened. And they tried twice with Meech Lake Accord and Charlottetown Accord. Both failed, and we sit in this limbo.
Wow, okay, that's interesting. And then Trudeau getting his appealed. Well, how did that have to do with this?
Appeal.
Yeah, you said that when Trudeau in 82 tried to get the act in, it got appealed.
It didn't get appealed. It went through, except the proclamation has to have that subject removed.
Okay, that's what.
Yeah, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Except
that subject, yeah.
Yeah, Quebec has to sign off on a language issue, and the Queen knows they're never going to do that. So she gets to hold the Hudson Bay Charter.
And this kind of brings back the whole that comes full circle around to like this whole thing's a big farce because of that, right?
Yeah. And so the only thing that you can default back to is the Hudson Bay Charter, which is a perpetual document.
Right.
And she's the holder of it.
That's what they're trying to avoid. When you go in there as commerce and trying to, if you reference that, if you bond something in reference to that, then they don't want to.
They don't want to touch that with a.
They know they're not really even in. They're not even. They're just practicing all this law on a lie, basically.
Yeah, they're allowed to do this from that charter, but that charter, like I said, they can't pass any laws that are repugnant to the common law, and they've got a lot of those.
Yeah.
And that's why they're not getting royal assent, because the royals, like the lieutenant governors and the governor general, can't sign that stuff. So they go unsigned. And that's the reason why, is because they're repugnant to the common law. So everything's kind of on the up and up. It's just you don't understand what it is that's happening. And once you kind of get that whole Hudson Bay Charter and read it a couple of times, you can start to see how this is working, and you'll see that document looks very much like what we're living in today.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around. Thanks for being patient with us and our learning this whole thing as we go along here.
Yeah, it took a lot of years. I took a lot of lumps. And, I had others, we all learned together and pieced things together and tried things. And it's that trial and error thing that really, when you get somebody off of a criminal charge, especially like assaulting a peace officer, they don't let those go. I mean, I've seen that. So,
yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put a link to Inpower in the show notes. And is there any other contact information that we can give to people?
No, the empowermovement.com. And it's we're working on this because it's going to be an automated sort of document so that we can have a database to keep track of everything. And we want to be able to keep track of all of the wealth that is generated by these instruments, decentralized, because everybody holds their own documents, so nobody, not even me, has control of it. And but we will record together worldwide, and we're going to just bill the system based on their offers in commerce, vaccinations, 5G. Spraying in the air, and smart meters, which are all weapons. So they can't prove they're safe because they're not. They're weapons.
So you're going to go after them with the notice of liability and
bill them.
Bill them for it.
And like I said, put it this way, somebody's paying for all of these vaccinations that are free for everybody. Somebody's footing the bill for all this infrastructure that's going up for 5G. Somebody's paying for all that stuff they're spraying in the air. You get the word, pay, money, money, money. They cannot do this without money.
Do we have 5G in like
Calgary?
Yeah.
Yeah. Calgary's a big one.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And Vancouver too?
Yeah, they've been rolling it out here. They wanted to use UBC as one of the main hubs, but I think they've, over this COVID thing, they were running up and down my lane. So
because we used to have the 5G on the phone, but it was never really connected. And I think now it's finally connected, right?
I think they're going to turn, what I'm hearing is they're going to turn the 5G on in the next couple of weeks in the United States, at least.
I think it's in New West. I think they have it in New West.
My phone connects to 5G now. I'll just say 5G on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. We're going to get cooked. Well, I had COVID, so I'm ready for the new 5G world with our new techno overlords. And I hope they have a position for me in the upper ranks of the slave class.
Yeah. I think they want to reduce the population by a drastic amount. And then, some kind of slave class, but they're kind of psychopathic and they're clever in a certain way, but they're kind of dumb in other ways.
They're overplaying their hand, do you think, right now?
Yeah, it's their arrogance is their biggest downfall. And, all the stuff that's going on with this COVID, it's just, to me, it's ridiculous. I see through it right away, but, people are buying in.
Are they depopulating through the jab or some other way, do you think?
The jab, the 5G, that's what I said. They were spraying in the air, but that wasn't efficient enough to get enough particles in your body. And so we knew they were going to have to do something way more direct and
intrusive.
We'll go with chips. Because, the whole chip idea, they could sell that because, then you don't have to carry ID and your stuff doesn't get stolen. It's in your hand and blah, blah, blah. So we thought they might go that way. But then when COVID came, I went, they're going vaccination. And so they got to get those particles for the Internet of Bodies in order for 5G to work. That's the weapon. And so they're all connected.
Okay.
It's all one thing, just different aspects of it.
Okay.
But so once 5G is up, if you've got particles in your body, it will activate those.
Okay.
And then they'll be able to control you?
Yeah. Among other things, or kill you or whatever it is.
Make somebody kill Graham, maybe. Hopefully not. We need him around for a few more years at least. Hopefully another 50. Right on, Cal. Thanks for coming on the show and taking some time out of your... I don't even know what day of the week it is anymore now that I'm in holiday mode here. I think it's Wednesday probably.
Yeah.
And we'll have to do this down the road and you can give us an update on how things are going.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Good to
buddy.
meet you guys.
Yeah.
Okay,
nice
Cal.
to meet you too. Thanks, buddy. We'll link to everything in the show notes.
And that was a chat with Cal. What'd you think, buddy?
Oh man, trying to wrap my head around it all. I don't know. It's pretty interesting. I mean, I was hoping maybe he'd go into a little bit more of the spiritual warfare part of the Watchers. When I was listening to him talk about all this law stuff, and then he goes into the Watchers and the Book of Enoch, I'm like, whoa, where are we going here? What's going on?
Fun stuff. That's the only way to find.
Fascinating. Yeah.
All over the place. Big thanks to Cal for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Of course, even bigger thanks if you're one of the 1% that choose to support the work over at grimerica.ca/support, signing up for a monthly, making a one-time donation. This will be show about 530 or something like that. Of course, sometimes it gives off the illusion of being a free podcast, but of course it is a value for value podcast in which we put out all this content to you guys for free. You decide if their time and effort is worth something to you and decide and support accordingly over at grimerica.ca/support. You can spam Graham at grimerica.com. buy the audiobooks over at adultbrain.ca. There's 30 of them or so up for sale now. There'll be a few more coming out in January.
Buy Darren's book.
Buy my book, A Canadian Shame.ca. Buy all that stuff. Sign up for the chats, grimerica.ca/chats. Get yourself on a contact at the cabin trip. All that fun stuff.
I got an idea. Can we put the Hudson's Bay Charter out at audio?
We'd have to make an ebook out of it first. Why don't you check it out and see if it's any good?
I mean, it's probably pretty dry, but
It's
they might not
probably
like it. I mean, it might cause a bit of a stir. If they, you know,
Super dry.
I know, but it might be good to be out there, you know?
More of a stir than the International Jew.
I looked for the other one, but it's not available.
Of course not.
What was the other one again? I had it here.
We love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Started writing down a list of things to do. Number 1 on the list of things to do was to write a list of things to do. Number 2 on the list, a little more nihilist, wrote down the cake is a lie. There is no spoon. Johnny flipped out, they put him in a rubber room. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Started to carve my initials into a 150-foot tree. Forgot who I was, where I was, cut my hand and it began to bleed. Was only looking to leave my mark in the bark in the park, now I'm in agony. I have no name. My legacy is written in the sparks in your brain. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Johnny crumpled up, threw away his list of things to do. Instead he got to jotting down his lifeblood legacy manifesto. Live by principles of peace, mix it with charity. Don't leave the next generation a world of scarcity. Johnny wasn't a commie, he was my fellow man. Johnny wasn't a commie, he was my fellow man. Johnny wasn't a Nazi, he was a firebrand. Johnny wasn't a Nazi, he was a firebrand. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance, the sky is falling. Hide all your money under your mattress. You call your enemy a fascist. Somebody call an ambulance.